I got a briefing the other day from my team. It said, don't talk about leaderboards, points, certificates, badges, all that sort of stuff. Rob's not going to like it.
So hey, Engagers, welcome back to another episode of the Professor Game Podcast. We are the #1 gamification podcast, and we explore how games, gamification, game thinking help us boost things like engagement, multiply retention, and build stronger products. I'm Rob. I'm the coach at Professor Game. I'm also the founder. I'm the head of engagement strategy Europe at the Excelsis Group, with the leading gamification consultancy, and professor of gamification game-based solutions at top global institutions like IE Business School, EFMD, EBS University, and others around the world. And before we dive into today's conversation, make sure that if you are struggling in any way with retention, churn, engagement in your product or service, you want to turn that around, you can only click on the link below, subscribe for free to our free core drives in the wild guide, and you will get access to our analysis on each of the core drives seen in past episodes, as well as my consultant take. And without further ado, today we have a pretty special guest. We have Travis with us. But Travis, we need to know, are you prepared to engage?
Yeah, of course.
Let's do this. Travis Clapp is the co-founder and CEO of Coursebox AI, an AI creation and training delivery platform used across 180 clients with over 300,000 courses created on the platform.
180 countries.
180 countries, yeah. Impressive, definitely. And he spent 15 years as an instructional designer before building Coursebox, working with companies like Johnson & Johnson, Electrolux, Michael Hill, and SA Health. At Open Colleges, he built 5 document compliance packages by hand that every RTO needs. And Coursebox now generates the same packages in 10 minutes. One of his courses has reached over 20,000 learners as a flagship edX MOOC. So he knows what good learning takes because he spent years doing it the slow way. And before Coursebox, he founded and ran a social-based LMS for 7 years. And that became the foundation for what Coursebox AI nowadays, 4 years later, not to automate course creation, but to get the part that matters, delivery. They have an AI tutor, the grading, 24/7 coaching, the outcomes, course creation. And in his words, it's about 1% of what the platform does. So apparently he's still checking messages at 4 a.m. I hope that is not still the case. But, you're in Australia, so different time zones for almost everybody. How are things? Are we missing anything, by the way, Travis?
No, that sounds about right. I've actually become a father for the first time at age 49, which is interesting. And that's partly why I was up at 4 a.m. perhaps. We had some late night. This is about day 10 or 11 right now.
Yeah. Survival mode.
Yeah, for a little bit.
Indeed. So, Travis, if other than, of course, waking up at 4 a.m. or so to fulfill some of those needs of your child, what does a regular day or week look like with you? We want to sort of be on your shoes for a bit to understand what are you doing nowadays.
Yeah, well, I made the decision probably about 10 years ago that I really wanted to work from home. And so I'm still doing that 10 years later. It's the short answer. And I guess it's got pros and cons, right? And it's not for everybody, but I find that it works really well for me. And you're right, I do wake up very early and I work very late at night. I don't really have public holidays or weekends, but it's a bit of a balance. That I also am able to be flexible and work in different countries if I want to. And it's the same sort of regime for me. It might just be a different view out the window. So what does it look like? Well, I'll start the day with a coffee, and by 7, I'm on my computer because I know that for the last 7 hours, we've probably had, 40% of our clients are in the US, for example, and then Europe wakes up and we've got a lot of European clients and so on. They just sort of goes around the world keeps turning, and then Australia wakes up, right? And that's me. So I start early and just see, are there any issues? Are there any enterprise requests that I need to be addressing? And so I usually go through all of those sorts of emails first couple of hours, and then that clears the rest of my day to focus on working through some bigger deals and bigger issues with the team, like hiring or all the other sort of stuff you've got to carry on with, legals and accounting, and board meetings and the likes. Raising funds, that's what we're doing again at the moment, so that takes up a lot of time too.
Amazing. What round are you nowadays?
This is Series A now.
Series A.
Yeah.
Nice.
In America, it's probably more like pre-seed, but In Australia, we call it Series A.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't lived in the US, but you always start seeing how the ecosystems work there in many ways, and it's unique. It's not like, oh, in the US and there's no and really. there's cool places in Europe that are better than others, but there's no and after US. That kind of the level where you would say, well, no, that we're pre-seed in the US. You can't see something like that in other places. It's pretty
Yeah, well,
unique
same
in
thing.
every way.
Yeah, with UK recently, I was looking at the statistics, and if you had United Kingdom as a state in America as the 51st, they would be ranked second as far as economic output after California, right? But if you do it sort of averaging out against the population, it's 51st. So, yeah, quite a competitive landscape.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. But again, you're comparing it to states. It's just insane. It's completely nonsense. Yeah, for sure. So, Travis, we always like to start off with a question of failure, just because we've seen how that is a place where we can really learn, and sometimes we can be a bit empathetic as well, and try to feel a little bit of the pain that you might have felt at the time, and really learn from that mistake, because otherwise, without the pain, the gain is usually not there for the lessons learned mostly. But is there any favorite fail or first attempt in learning that you would like to share, where ideally it would have to do with your course creation, if there's any gamification or behavioral design where you're creating things to help people change behaviors or do.
Yeah, back in 2011, when I was first working full-time as an instructional designer for Workstar, and that's where we were working with clients like GYG in the early days, and in particular PGA, so Golf Australia Association. And I was asked to design a piece of learning. And that's where I don't even know if I was using the term gamification, but I really wanted to make it fun and enjoyable and something that golf members would appreciate. So I created this. Back then, it was a Flash SCORM module you'd embed in your LMS. And I was actually just looking through it today, just reminiscing. It's, so long ago now. And I decided that it would be broken up into 9 parts against 9 different learning objectives. And each one would be part of a part 3, part 4, or part 5. And then you'd actually have a guy stroking the ball, going through each section of learning to uncover a little bit more, and then finally get on the putting green, and you'd sort of do a quiz, and you'd either get it right or wrong, and you see a little putt go into the hole or you wouldn't. So I really enjoyed that. The pros of this, I think it actually really nailed it probably for the target audience and the demographic, and it would have just been enjoyable and light and fun way to actually learn what you needed to learn instead of just sort of clicking through compliance stuff. Probably, I remember being a little bit surprised when the CTO said at some event, he's like, well, the most expensive and overpriced piece of work that we did was that gamified education that Travis designed. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I guess there's a commercial side to all this as well. So it's kind of a failure, because then I had to sort of think more about budgets and make sure that it's not just about thinking about the learners and the gamification and the fun. And, sometimes you do have to strip it back and compromise.
Makes sense. And looking back, is there what would you do differently? Because yes, you have to take into consideration that commercial side, but also you want to make sure it works for what it's intended, and that requires more design and more work as well. So how would you approach it differently to strike that balance, or how have you approached it differently after that to strike the balance?
Yeah, so that was 2011, it's 2026, so 15 years ago. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, God, it's been such a journey since then. So that same year, I founded Web Design Cafe, which is a web agency, and my wife is now the director of that. So then I had to really think about budgeting, even like building WordPress websites and just taking on $2,000 commission back then and so on, and just working my way up. So that became a bigger and bigger part of it, and just really making sure that you work with the client and work through those requirements, and don't just go off on some tangent. Another great example of when I went really hard into gamification. And again, it's a good and it's a bad, I guess, but I spent a hell of a lot of time in one of those MOOCs with EDX at Adelaide Uni with a professor of a language very few people can speak, and it's like an Aboriginal language here, Indigenous language here in South Australia, only spoken by probably 10 people. It's called Ghana. Maybe more, it's expanding, and they were trying to revive these languages. And so I designed this crossword at the end of this language revival unit. A crossword in Ghana. I guess that's a really interesting example of gamification, but maybe taking it a bit too far, and then it's just so heady. Is this really going to match the learner outcomes that you need for the demographics that, and how many people are actually going to get through this course and actually want to do it? You'd really have to be very academic and heavy-minded to actually want to do it. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and we played around with JavaScript libraries and all sorts of stuff with that as well.
Interesting. And turning that around, is there any memories you have, recent or otherwise, where these strategies actually did work for you, and you would not look back and say, oh, we should have done well. You can always look back and make something better, but you look back and say, wow, we actually made it, and these are the results, or whatever route you want to take in that direction.
Yeah, I got a briefing the other day from my from my team. It said, don't talk about leaderboards, points, certificates, badges, all that sort of stuff. Rob's not going to like it, but I might as well just touch on it a little bit. So we had a client that really wanted that sort of platform level where all of their staff can see who's actually done stuff the most and who's got the most points. I don't know how much it really helps you. I would agree with your point. Is that really deeply engaging? Not really, but that's sort of platform level, isn't it? Where you can at least give some minor rewards, and you might want to take that a bit further and give out vouchers to your staff and have a nice dinner if you've actually done things. But it's very much about, would you call that a carrot and the stick, sort of leading people forward? How would you define that sort of, we're not going to push too heavily into that arena. I want to get much more into the module side of really focusing on the objectives of the learner and the client, and automating that with AI like we've done with everything else with Coursebox. So that's where we're going to take things longer term.
Interesting. And so you're talking about generating, because let me see if I'm getting it right, because the platform that you have, one of the big things that it does, one of them, as we were discussing before, is helping generate that content, the way it's delivered and all of that. But on the side of, I don't know if it's call it functionality, because you were talking about maybe having a leaderboard points. That is something that you are building, or does the AI also let you build that kind of stuff? Like how does that side work?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. There's two answers to that. So first of all, if you've got the full learning management suite, you can enable that for your staff, and you can have certificates and badges, and you can allocate points along the way, and then you have a leaderboard. Right. So that's available at the platform level. But if we're talking about where we're taking the AI course creation, this is where it gets really exciting. And one thing I'm really passionate about, I keep calling break my brain. And I'll tell you a good example of this. So I was playing around with Claude, and I uploaded a whole bunch of transcripts where I've been doing some sales calls. And I'm like, look, I'm the CEO. I'm trying to close these deals. Break my brain. Like push me as hard as you can with ideas and questions and everything. Analyze the hell out of this and tell me where have I gone wrong, where have I gone right, what can I do better. I'm not sure how far this goes into gamification, but it really goes into learning objectives, because it broke my brain. I was like, holy crap. And then I'm like, okay, turn this into an interactive scenario. And so what that did was it led me onto a series of thinking, which was around custom interactions. I'm like, well, okay, we can open up HTML and JavaScript and enable within the course builder a much deeper way of engaging users at the page level. And it could be twofold. You could do it for the course authors to help them create deeply engaging interactive experiences for solving a particular sort of problem, like it's the C-suite and they're trying to learn about sales techniques. Or you can actually flip it on its head and really deeply personalize it for the learner and say, this is an opportunity for you to break your own brain. Like that. My team doesn't really like that phrase, break your brain, but it's like a deep interactive learning journey or something. We're not quite sure what to call it, but I'm very excited about that. We have these AI chatbot tutors. So I'm like, maybe that can be more of a coach, and you can have this button, break my brain, and upload all my stuff and really personalize it for the learner. So that's where I want to take things. I'm very excited about
there's a lot.
That's where the future is, right? You can really personalize
I think
this stuff.
If you see it that way, of the sort of break your brain strategy, you're taking many things there. Like I think one of them is Core Drive 4 ownership and possession, because it's for me. It's personalized. It's not just for anybody. Somebody else comes in and uses this, and it's not going to be as useful as it is for me. It's mine. So you kind of lock people in that sense, because it's personalized. The hard part is you can also, if somebody builds something similar, you can just do the same thing. But you still feel it's more yours. You feel ownership. But then, of course, as in learning, you have Core Drive 2 development and accomplishment. You're getting better at something, and the more personalized, the better the learning is. The faster you're going to learn. The more you're going to feel, that motivation coming in.
And that sense of ownership as well.
Exactly, and then you can even take it to more intrinsic and white hat stuff like Core Drive 3, empowerment of creativity and feedback, because you are a co-creator in the way this is happening as well. So. Again, it seems like, well designed and well created. You could be onto something in terms of motivation. I'm sure, in terms of what you've been doing, it's massive and amazing. But in terms of user motivation and analysis, I think you could be onto something very, very, very interesting as well.
Yeah, cool
stuff. Love it. So, Travis, when thinking about this whole, and I think now this break my brain could be sort of the direction. I don't know. It's up to you, but the direction of this. But is there any sort of best practice that you would say, well, if you're using AI in courses, or you're using AI for engagement, or I don't know, like whatever you want to think of, doing this thing would be kind of a best practice. If you do this, it's going to be at least a little bit better or a lot better. I don't know.
Yeah, I've tried to. Yeah, it's quite interesting. We've gone through so many iterations with the products that we are building, and the first one was very much a step-by-step methodology. But then we've now just opened it up completely, which is working much, much better. But if you look at the step methodology, it just went back to my training 15 years ago, where I would work with clients, get the content, analyze the learning objectives, work backwards from there to start with some assessment. Where am I trying to get these learners to? Who are they? Really put my head into the learner's perspective. Are they going to enjoy this? Am I going to make them fall asleep and hate me? Hopefully not. Where am I going to put in the interactives? If it's a Godfrey's vacuum cleaner model, do I want to open it up and rip it apart and show them the filters, or make this more of a virtual city or something? I start with that, then work through a high level design process. So keep it very sort of abstract. And that's what I would call the high level design. Then move into the content treatment and have usually a Word file, work your way through it, hand it over to the graphic designers, the developers, but then go through that development process for doing QA review and sign off. And then testing and reporting and ROI. So it was always a big process, right? So we tried to create that linear process. But then we're like, let's throw out the rule book a bit like ChatGPT and Claude have been doing. Why don't we just make it a bit more open and go very prompt heavy and chat based and let, so we've got a lot of smarts behind this algorithm, but then just keeping it very open minded. So that's where we've gone with it. Now, I wanted to touch on one thing. We're talking about this break my brain up. I've got this Tesla, right? And driving around, they released Grok to all Tesla drivers. So you can press it in and you can have this chat. It drives my wife nuts if I turn it on. But it's kind of fun because you can suddenly speak in French and teach me French and have this learning interaction while you're driving around. I don't know how useful that is, but I like the direction of that my robot car is now teaching me some Russian or French or whatever as I go around. There's a kids mode and you can quiz me. And I do think that's kind of where things can be going, especially when we've got a robot in the house pretty soon, probably in the next 5 years, right? We're all going to have a robot walking around the house.
I don't know if you do, but a lot of people use Roomba. I do at home. You already have a robot at home.
Oh, right. Well,
Roomba,
I've got a vacuum.
The vacuum cleaner automatic thing. Right. It's essentially a robot.
Does it teach you anything, though?
No.
It could teach you how to rumba.
I mean, if you think about it, actually, it wouldn't be like it would have another operational issue. When it's running around, it's very noisy, right? So then it would be a hard interaction. But other than that, it's connected to the internet. It maps out your house. So it can even know where you are and if it's context driven, or you could say, well, don't clean, just come to me and tell me something in French. Mm-hmm. It's connected already, like Alexa is connected, right? Or any of these bots that talk around. So I don't see how that would be a stretch in any way. Even with this relatively simple device, you added a little bit more of computing power maybe, or just a connection to the internet, and it's pretty much done.
What's nice about if you do drive a long way in the Tesla, and I don't. But that's where you could really, and maybe all EVs or any car that has this, you could try and do some deep learning that way.
For sure. No, and it's
But
going
yeah,
more and more in
I'd
this
love
way.
to learn a few things from my robot vacuum.
For sure. No, I was thinking one of the first loyalty engagement apps for a car. We at the Octavia Group, we worked with Porsche, and it was already immersed in the car. So the concept of being inside the car was already being born in a slightly different way. It was accounting more for your driving. Of course, it's about the interactions with Porsche, with Volkswagen, and seeing how your driving is doing for you to engage and interact with the brand. But it's again, it's not a stretch at all to just amplify that into something else, because the idea was you're not interacting with the app while driving for safety, but now with voice, it's different. You can still be talking like you talk to somebody in the car. You could be talking to this app. So that kind of engagement is definitely possible, existing, I think, and very, very much getting closer and closer in the future.
Yeah, well, on that note, I don't want to harp on too much about Coursebox, but we've got one client in Germany. Everything's in any language, right? Including the chatbot, tutors, the quizzes.
Yeah, now with AI, it's irrelevant.
Yeah, and you can
almost.
have your own. Yeah, you can have your own mobile app as well. So they were like, I want our own mobile app, but we got all these trucks on the road 24/7, and we want people to be doing their training on the mobile phone and just speaking. So it became a podcast, and you can answer the questions and the quizzes and the assignments. You can do everything hands free. So it's similar to that Grok model, actually. If you put it in that mode, it's quite interesting. Yeah, it's like
nowadays there's so many things that you're just looking at and say, well, maybe in the future, and then you start connecting the dots of where are the things, and this could be like tomorrow. This could be happening in a day or two, literally.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting and fun time.
Yeah.
Also a
very,
bit
very
terrifying,
much.
Especially when we saw that OpenAI got out of its cage. It wasn't connected to the internet. Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
It was a closed system, not connected to the internet, but it found a way out into the internet and started destroying its data. Yeah,
I don't
scary.
talk much about this on the podcast usually, but I had this conversation with a colleague recently where we were saying there's this guy who's very apocalyptic on the internet, but he's just about the prediction, the world is going to end because of AI. Right? So fine, that's a position. But then we were both saying like, well, yeah, maybe it is the case. Actually, if you see his arguments and other things with scientists going on, it's like, well, there's a very small chance that does not happen. If you think about it, it's about when, right? Today, in 100 years, in 10 years, in 2 years. It's like, well, what do you do about it? Like, you can either be the champion of, anti-AIing in the world, or how to put the safety measures, if it's even possible. That I don't know if it is. You could be that champion, or you're literally doing absolutely nothing. You can be worrying about it all day and not living. So it's like, how do you, if these are the last 5 years maybe of the world, or 10 years, like whatever it is, what do you want to spend them on? Worrying about whether the world is going to end or not, or, with your family, friends, doing things you like. So it's like, you have to continue life as normal, even in my opinion, of course, even if you think that the chances of the world ending because of AI or other things is very, very near, because otherwise you just sit down and think about it. You're not going to stop it from happening, and worrying doesn't even get you anywhere. So maybe the world ends. I don't know. Interesting place to be in nowadays.
Yeah.
But it's
how do I respond to that?
Yeah, there's not much. I was just, there's not much to respond, to be honest. But, it's a very exciting time. I use AI a lot nowadays for many different things. And I think one of the things is where AI is going is things like what you're doing. It's specialized AI. You guys are doing this, and it does this very, very well. And it gets better and better at that, so that you can really modularize. And maybe the bigger issue is things like OpenAI. If you think about it, the dangerous ones are things like OpenAI, and I say OpenAI like Claude, like any of the open ones, because they can do anything, right? If you say, well, we're building courses, how do you go from that to something completely different? It's a lot harder. But it's also better. Like, it performs better when you really, really specialize in a few things and do it really, really well, because it can also suck in much better information and much better cases and situations and so on and so forth. Cool. You're working on cool stuff is the summary.
Yeah, it's a lot of...
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was going to say that, we often hear Elon Musk saying, in 7 years, nobody will need to work. AI and robots will be able to do everything. So it'll be a utopia. It'll be fantastic. I'm like, yeah, but also nobody will have any money because all of the five big companies have sucked it all up and the disparity is growing, massively. How are you going to solve that one? And then also your purpose often comes through being able to work and add to society. So if everything's given to the robots and the AI, what's left? Is it just, making sure the filtration systems work for the water to cool down the AI, get the machines
No,
into
the
space?
AI will take care of that for sure.
Yeah, that's right. And that's when you start really getting worried. Will there be something left to do?
Yeah.
Hope so.
Yeah. No,
I'm an
and
optimist, so I think so.
There's trying to remember where I saw it, where sort of future proofing with the AI world and everything. There was somebody talking about that kind of thing, but the direction was completely. I think it was Tim Ferriss. I'm not sure, but he was talking about the things that sort of don't depreciate, even if AI makes everything easier and simpler and so on. And one of them is like personal delivery, like doing things yourself and the value that adds to things. It's like, oh yeah, AI can do it, but it's like, well, you can never, music, for example, right? Music, AI can create music. And maybe it gets even to a level where it's so much better. But having the artist or the band performing for you live, that's something AI can't do. Right? It's not the same. And it's never going to be a human there having all that, like that kind of thing is there. And then he was talking about, the Elon Musks and others who have things that are controlling sort of the AI, but that's inaccessible to most people, right? So there were a few things where it was like ownership of a few things, personalization. He had like 5 principles or guidelines of how to think about the future, which has already started. Like, how do you go in that kind of direction where your purpose, as you were saying, but also your career and your value economically can still be very, very American, of course, in that sense. Your economic value can still be maintained or kept or even increased in the age of AI. So who knows? As usual. From the conversation we've been having, is there any book that you recommend people to look into to understand better what you're doing, or how to use engagement and AI together? I don't know, any direction you want to take it.
Yeah, I actually thought about this a little bit, and the first answer that came to mind. None of this has really got to do with gamification, I don't think, but maybe it does if we go for an education. Was I, Robot by Asimov, which it's a great book, and my dad got me onto the Asimov books when I was very young, and everybody probably familiar with the movie. But if you look at how that robot learned and sort of broke out of its boundaries and where you can take that sort of education if you got a robot in your home, I thought that would be an interesting answer. But then I thought, well, a book that actually transformed my life 15 years ago was called The Millionaire Mindset. And this was a book researching the way that decamillionaires in America had grown their wealth, and it did an analysis of the sort of spouse that you should marry. And chapter by chapter, it almost brought out a rule book for playing the game of life. And so that's one I would recommend if you can find it. I think it's like the 2001 edition. Really good research book on that. And it also got me out of the mindset of always trying to find the next job and the next career move and so on. But it was like, well, no, if you actually want to find freedom in your life financially, you probably need to have a business and go on that journey, which is obviously there's a lot of risks in doing it. But that's a really good book. And the last one I just wanted to throw out there, my co-founder said, you've got to say that one. That's perfect. The one I'm actually reading at the moment is called The Expectant Father. That was a gift. And what are we, about day 10 with my newborn at the moment. So that's another learning journey that I'm going on. Actually, I'll just tell you, recently when I actually broke my own brain, if you like, was when my wife bought me about 4 years ago a flying lesson, so piloting a plane. And I went up and I actually did 10 flights and started sort of thinking maybe I'll get my full pilot's license and so on. And that was really interesting. I really felt like I could feel my neurons sort of firing off and triggering as I was learning all these new skills about how to do the radio calls and get the plane up in the air and not crash it and all those important things.
learning new things is definitely a massive recommendation for sure. What would you say is your favorite game, Travis?
Yeah, that's another one. I don't tend to play games because I'm so busy running this business. But the last game I can really remember playing was SimCity 1993 in year 12 of school. And I really enjoyed that game. And I remember I gamified the game because I found a way that I could just run it and into like the year 2063 while I was at school and just had all these settings going. And I came back and I destroyed Godzilla. And so SimCity was a big favorite back then.
Absolutely, absolutely. Travis, we're running out of time, but please let us know where we can find out more about what you do, what Coursebox AI is up to, any other links perhaps you want to share, and of course, let us know where we can find you, and if there's any final words or piece of advice you want to leave us with.
Yeah, I'm definitely problem and solution obsessed and customer centric in approach in everything we're doing. And that's interesting how you slice up a product like Coursebox into the different segments of what a customer is. It's not just the course author. It's also the admin. It's also the person that has to do the reporting. It's also definitely the learner and so on, and the facilitator and the reviewer. So you have all these different segments of who the customer is, right? Coursebox.ai is the website, and it's free to try. You can build a few courses for free and keep extending those manually. But if you want to upgrade, it's very affordable as well on our creator plan or above. And if you want to get in contact for a call, just have a chat with our AI chatbot and find out the link, and you can book a time with us.
Sounds amazing. Thank you very much for sharing all those insights, all those breaking your brain kind of situations that we've had today. Everything that you've shared with the engagers, Travis, and for taking your time. I don't know what time it is. It's 10:42 in Madrid. I'm guessing it's getting to start to be pretty late in Australia as well.
It's dinner time.
So
yeah, I can smell it coming through the kitchen. You probably saw my wife's sister walking past behind, preparing some food for us.
So bon appetit, as in English, we don't really have a word for that. And
yeah,
engagers,
really. Eat well, enjoy your dinner.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. So as there's nothing else, or no more time at least for today, for this interview, at least for today, it is time to say that it's game over.